Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the ESS Liberty and watched the stars through the large window. Earth looked peaceful below them, with blue oceans and white clouds moving slowly across the surface. The year was 2387, and humanity had spread across 12 star systems. Most days were quiet like this one, with trade ships moving between planets and research vessels exploring new areas of space. Dr. Lisa Hamilton sat at her workstation, checking the long-range sensors as she did every morning. She had been the chief scientist on the Liberty for 8 years and knew the patterns of space around Earth better than anyone. The sensors showed the usual traffic of human ships, some asteroids moving through their normal paths, and the steady signals from the outer colonies. Nothing seemed different until she noticed something strange on the edge of her screens. The first sign was a ripple in space itself, like heat waves rising from hot ground on a summer day. Lisa leaned forward and adjusted her instruments. The readings made no sense at first. Something massive was moving toward the Sol system, but it was still too far away to see clearly. She ran the numbers again and felt her heart skip a beat. Whatever was coming toward them was huge. Lisa pressed the communication button on her console. Admiral Morrison, you need to see this right away. Jake walked over to her station and looked at the data flowing across her screens. He had been in space for 25 years and had seen many strange things, but this was different. The energy readings were off the charts. How big are we talking about, Lisa? Sir, I count at least 500 separate objects. They are all moving together in a tight formation. Based on their energy signatures, each one is larger than our biggest battleship. Lisa's voice was steady, but Jake could hear the worry underneath. Captain Ryan Bennett was having his morning coffee on the Mars orbital station when the alert came through. The message from Earth was marked urgent and came directly from Admiral Morrison. Ryan opened the file and read the details twice to make sure he understood. 500 unknown ships were heading toward Earth. They would reach the outer edge of the solar system in less than 18 hours. Ryan called his senior staff together in the main briefing room. The Mars station was humanity's first line of defense if anything came from outside the solar system. They had early warning systems, long-range weapons, and a small fleet of patrol ships. It had always seemed like enough to handle pirates or raiders. Now Ryan was not so sure. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a situation. A large fleet of unknown ships is approaching our system. We do not know who they are or what they want, but we need to be ready for anything. Ryan looked around the room at his officers. They were good people who had trained for years, but none of them had ever faced a real enemy fleet. The hours passed slowly as the unknown ships got closer. Earth's Defense Council met in emergency session. President Mary Collins sat at the head of the long table in the underground command center beneath Geneva. She had hoped to spend her time in office working on peaceful projects like new colonies and trade agreements. Instead, she was facing the first potential threat to Earth in over a century. General Alex Turner spread out the tactical displays on the table. Earth had 200 ships that could fight if needed. They were good ships with trained crews, but they had been built more for keeping peace than for major battles. The approaching fleet was more than twice as large, and their technology was completely unknown. What do we know about these ships? President Collins asked. Commander Kate Phillips of Earth Intelligence stood up. Very little, ma'am. They appeared at the edge of our sensor range about 6 hours ago. They are maintaining a tight formation and heading directly for Earth. We have tried to contact them on all standard frequencies, but they have not responded. Dr. Richard Stone sat in his laboratory deep beneath the mountains of Colorado and watched the same data that everyone else was seeing. As director of the Advanced Defense Research Institute, He knew more about Earth's real military capabilities than most people. He also knew that what most people thought were Earth's defenses were only the visible part of a much larger system. The call he was waiting for came at exactly the time he expected. "Dr. Stone, this is Admiral Morrison. I think it might be time to consider our other options." Richard looked at the sealed cabinet in the corner of his lab. Inside was a red communication device that had never been used. It was connected to systems that most people did not know existed. "I understand, Admiral. I will begin the preliminary checks." As the unknown fleet continued toward Earth, normal life went on in most places. People went to work, children went to school, and the news broadcasts talked about the approaching ships, but told everyone not to panic. The government said they were probably traders or explorers who would make contact soon. But in hidden facilities around the solar system, other preparations were beginning. Engineer Patricia Moore received a coded message at her station on Europa. She had been waiting for this message for 12 years. Physicist Danny Clark got a similar signal at his research base in the asteroid belt. Colonel Steve Adams began quietly moving ships into positions that looked random, but were actually part of a carefully planned formation. The breakthrough came when the unknown fleet was still 4 hours away from the outer planets. A communication signal finally came through, but it was not what anyone had hoped to hear. The voice was deep and harsh, speaking in a language that Earth's computers quickly translated. "Primitive humans of the third planet, I am Emperor Vorthik of the Zephyrian Empire. You will surrender your world and serve the Empire, or face complete destruction. You have one rotation of your planet to decide. Choose wisely." The message played again and again on screens across Earth. People stopped what they were doing and listened to the alien voice making demands. Children asked their parents what it meant. Adults tried to stay calm, but many were afraid. President Collins called another emergency meeting. This time she included military leaders from all the colonies and representatives from the major cities on Earth. The alien emperor had given them 24 hours to surrender or fight. "We will not surrender Earth to anyone," Collins said firmly. "But we need to know what we are facing." The Zephyrian fleet continued its approach, and now Earth's telescopes could see them clearly. The ships were dark and angular, covered in armor that seemed to absorb light. They moved in perfect formation, like a school of deadly fish swimming through space toward their prey. Jake Morrison stood on his bridge and watched the enemy fleet grow larger on his screens. In a few hours, he would find out if humanity was ready for war. Emperor Vorthik stood in the command center of his flagship, the destroyer of worlds, and smiled as he watched the small blue planet grow larger on his screens. The ship was massive, over 3 kilometers long and covered in the finest armor. The Empire could build. Its weapons could crack planets, and its shields could stop almost any attack. Around him, 500 similar vessels moved in perfect formation toward their target. The Emperor was tall even for his species, with gray skin marked by the ritual scars that showed his victories in battle. He had conquered 43 star systems in his lifetime and added billions of new subjects to the Empire. Earth would be number 44, and from what his scouts had reported, it would be one of the easiest conquests yet. General Zektar approached with the latest intelligence reports. He was the Emperor's most trusted military advisor and had planned the strategy for most of their successful campaigns. "My lord, our analysis of the human defenses is complete. They have approximately 200 combat vessels, mostly small, patrol ships, and medium cruisers. Their weapons appear to be basic kinetic projectiles and primitive nuclear devices." Vorthik nodded as he reviewed the data. The humans had spread across several star systems, which showed they had some technical skill, but their military technology was at least 50 years behind the Empire's capabilities. Their ships were slow, their armor was thin, and their weapons were the kind of things the Empire had stopped using decades ago. "What about their ground defenses?" the Emperor asked. "Minimal, my lord. They have some orbital platforms around there, major worlds, and a few asteroid-based weapon stations. Nothing that our quantum disruptors cannot handle easily." Zektar pulled up tactical displays showing Earth's defensive positions. "I estimate we can neutralize their entire fleet within 6 hours of engagement." The Emperor's confidence was based on more than just superior numbers. The Zephyrian Empire had perfected the art of conquest over centuries. Their ships used quantum field generators that could bend space around them, making them nearly impossible to hit with conventional weapons. Their hulls were made of self-repairing metamaterials that could fix damage faster than most enemies could cause it. More importantly, the Empire's weapons were designed to make resistance pointless. The quantum disruptors did not just destroy enemy ships. They broke down the molecular bonds that held matter together. Shields were useless against them because they did not fire energy or projectiles that could be blocked. They simply made solid objects stop being solid. Back on Earth, the government was trying to decide how to respond to the ultimatum. President Collins sat in the secure briefing room and listened to reports from her advisors. The news was not encouraging. Earth's fleet was outnumbered more than 2 to 1, and intelligence reports suggested the alien ships were far more advanced than anything humanity had built. "What about our allies?" Collins asked. "Can we get help from the other colonies, General?" Turner shook his head. "The colonies have their own defense fleets, but even if we combine all our forces, we would still be badly outnumbered. And there is not enough time to gather ships from the outer systems before the aliens reach Earth." Dr. Stone sat quietly in the corner of the room and listened to the discussion. He knew things that the others did not, but he was not allowed to talk about them in open meetings. The real question was not whether Earth could fight the aliens, but whether it was time to reveal what humanity had really been building for the past century. Commander Phillips stood up to give her intelligence. "Briefing. We have been analyzing the alien transmission and comparing it to our databases. The Zephyrian Empire is known to several other species in this part of the galaxy. They have a reputation for complete destruction of any civilization that resists them." She activated a holographic display that showed the path of Zephyrian conquests across the galaxy. System after system had fallen to their fleets over the past 1,000 years. Some civilizations had tried to fight, others had surrendered immediately. The result was always the same: total absorption into the Empire. The Altarian Federation fell to them just 2 years ago. Phillips continued. "They had technology roughly equal to ours and a fleet of over 300 ships. The battle lasted 6 days before they were completely destroyed." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. If the technologically advanced Altarians could not stop the Empire, what chance did Earth have? Meanwhile, on the approaching Zephyrian flagship, War Commander Thexmal was making final preparations for the attack. He had led the advance forces for the Empire for over 20 years and had never failed to break an enemy's defenses. The humans would be no different from all the others. The Zephyrian battle plan was simple and effective. First, their long-range quantum disruptors would destroy the human orbital defenses and any ships that tried to interfere. Then the main fleet would move into orbit around Earth and demonstrate their power by destroying a few cities. Usually, that was enough to make any remaining resistance collapse. If the humans were stubborn, the Empire had other options. They could use their matter converters to turn Earth's atmosphere into something the humans could not breathe. They could redirect asteroids to crash into population centers. They could even use temporal field generators to slow down time in human cities, making their inhabitants age and die while the rest of the world watched helplessly. But Thexmol did not expect to need such extreme measures. The humans seemed like a young species that had only recently learned to travel between stars. They probably had never faced a real military threat and would surrender quickly once they saw what they were up against. Dr. Lisa Hamilton continued monitoring the approaching fleet from her position on the Liberty. The alien ships were now close enough for detailed scans, and what she saw made her stomach turn cold. The energy readings from their weapons were incredible. Each major ship in the fleet had enough firepower to destroy Earth's entire defense network by itself, but there was something else in the scan data that puzzled her. The alien ships all used the same basic design principles. Their hulls, their power systems, their weapons. Everything followed patterns that suggested they had not changed their technology much in hundreds of years. They had perfected their approach to warfare and saw no reason to improve it further. Lisa had studied military history and knew that this kind of thinking could be dangerous. Armies that became too confident in their superiority sometimes missed threats they did not expect. She made a note to include this observation in her report, though she doubted it would matter much in the coming battle. Captain Bennett watched the alien fleet approach Mars and felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. The Mars orbital station would be one of the first targets when the fighting started. His people were ready to do their duty, but he knew they were facing odds that no amount of courage could overcome. The alien ultimatum had 6 hours left when Emperor Vorthok sent another message to Earth. This time the tone was even more threatening. Humans, you have ignored our generous offer of surrender. We see that you are moving your pathetic ships into defensive positions. This resistance is pointless and will only result in more destruction when we claim your world. You cannot stop the Empire. No one ever has. Dr. Amanda Rogers walked through the corridors of Installation 7, hidden deep beneath the ice of Antarctica. The facility looked like a research station from the outside, but Amanda knew it was the most important military secret humanity had ever kept. She had been the director of Project Omega for 15 years, and today was the day she had always hoped would never come. The project had started 89 years ago, when Earth's deep space sensors first detected signals that suggested hostile alien civilizations existed beyond human space. The government had quietly decided that humanity needed to be ready for threats that conventional weapons could not handle. What they built was not just advanced technology, it was a completely different approach to warfare. Amanda reached the main control room and placed her hand on the security scanner. The heavy doors slid open to reveal a chamber filled with displays and control systems that did not look like anything else on Earth. The technology was so advanced that only a few dozen people in the entire solar system understood how it worked. Commander Neil Patterson was already at his station on Titan, Saturn's largest moon. To anyone watching, he appeared to be running routine maintenance on the mining equipment that harvested ice and minerals from the moon's surface. But the mining equipment was not what it seemed to be. Hidden beneath the industrial machinery was the most powerful gravitational manipulation system ever built. Neil had been stationed on Titan for 8 years, waiting for the signal that would activate his part of Project Omega. The equipment around him could bend space and time in ways that most scientists thought were impossible. When activated, it would create gravitational fields strong enough to trap entire fleets of ships or redirect their weapons back at them. Engineer Chris Baker worked at a similar installation on Europa, Jupiter's ice-covered moon. His facility was disguised as a scientific research base studying the ocean beneath Europa's frozen surface. In reality, it housed quantum field generators that could alter the fundamental forces of physics in localized areas of space. Chris had helped design the systems he now maintained. The quantum field generators were humanity's answer to advanced alien technology. Instead of trying to build better shields or more powerful weapons, human scientists had learned to change the rules of physics themselves. In the areas affected by the generators, alien technology would simply stop working. Lieutenant Helen Davis, coordinated from a hidden base built into an asteroid in the belt between Mars and Jupiter. Her installation looked like a small mining operation, but it was actually the command center for a network of devices spread throughout the solar system. These devices had been waiting in dark space for decades, invisible to any known scanning technology. Helen's job was to make sure all the hidden installations could communicate with each other when the time came to activate Project Omega. The network had been tested thousands of times in simulation, but it had never been used in a real battle. Today would prove whether humanity's most ambitious defense project actually worked. The genius of Project Omega was not in any single weapon or defensive system. Instead, it was based on a fundamental insight about how advanced civilizations fought wars. Most species developed increasingly powerful direct-fire weapons and stronger defensive shields. They focused on building ships that could dish out more damage and take more punishment than their enemies. Humanity had taken a different path. Human scientists had realized that no matter how advanced a civilization became, they still had to obey the basic laws of physics. Gravity, electromagnetism, and quantum mechanics worked the same way for everyone. But what if those laws could be changed in small areas of space? D.R. Stone had been one of the original researchers on Project Omega, and he understood better than anyone what humanity was about to unleash. The system had three main components, each more revolutionary than the last. The gravitational resonance arrays could create space-time distortions that would make enemy weapons miss their targets, or even turn back on the ships that fired them. The quantum field generators could destabilize exotic matter and advanced materials, causing even the most sophisticated alien technology to break down at the molecular level. And the cascade amplifiers could spread these effects through quantum entanglement, affecting multiple targets simultaneously across vast distances. Amanda Rogers received the authorization code she had been waiting for directly from President Collins. The message was simple. Project Omega is authorized for immediate activation. Protect Earth at all costs. She walked to the central control panel and entered her personal codes. Around the solar system, similar actions were taking place at dozens of hidden installations. Systems that had been dormant for decades began to power up. Energy readings that would have been impossible to hide under normal circumstances were masked by the natural background. Radiation of space. The Zephyrian fleet was now only 2 hours away from Earth's outer defenses when the first phase of Project Omega came online. Emperor Vorthik noticed nothing different on his sensors. His ships continued their steady approach, confident in their overwhelming superiority. But throughout the solar system, humanity's real defenses were awakening. The gravitational resonance array on Titan synchronized with similar installations on dozens of other moons and asteroids. The quantum field generators began building up the energy they would need to alter local physics. The cascade amplifiers prepared to link everything together into a single, coordinated system. Commander Patterson ran his final system checks and reported ready to Amanda Rogers. His part of the network was functioning perfectly. The gravitational fields he could generate were strong enough to bend light itself, and precise enough to target individual ships in a large fleet. Engineer Baker confirmed that his quantum field generators were operating within normal parameters. The exotic energy patterns they produced could make the most advanced materials revert to ordinary matter in seconds. Alien hulls that were designed to self-repair would instead dissolve like sugar in water. Lieutenant Davis verified that all communication links were secure and that the cascade amplifiers were ready to coordinate the attack. When Project Omega activated, every hidden installation in the solar system would work together as parts of a single, vast weapon system. The beauty of the plan was that the Zephyrians would never see it coming. Their sensors were designed to detect conventional weapons and energy shields. They could spot nuclear missiles, laser cannons, and particle beam weapons from millions of kilometers away. But they had no way to detect alterations to space-time itself or changes in the fundamental constants of physics. Amanda looked at the countdown timer on her main screen. In 90 minutes, the Zephyrian fleet would be in position to attack Earth. In 91 minutes, Project Omega would show them that humanity was not the primitive species they thought it was. Dr. Stone made his final preparations in Colorado. His installation controlled the theoretical framework that made all the other systems possible. Without his calculations and field equations, the gravitational arrays and quantum generators would just be expensive machines. With them, humanity had built the most sophisticated defense system in the galaxy. The irony was not lost on him that Project Omega had been designed by people who genuinely hoped it would never be used. Every scientist and engineer who worked on it wanted humanity to live in peace with its neighbors among the stars. But they also understood that peace was only possible when civilization could defend itself against those who chose war. As the final countdown began, Amanda Rogers thought about all the people who had worked on Project Omega over the past 89 years. Many of them had died without ever knowing if their work would be needed. Today, their legacy would either save humanity or fail in the most spectacular way possible. The Zephyrian Empire was about to learn that some opponents were more dangerous than they appeared. At exactly 1432 GMT, Emperor Vorthik gave the order that had destroyed 43 civilizations before humanity. All ships commence bombardment of the third planet. Show these primitives the price of defying the Empire. The response was immediate and devastating. 500 Zephyrian warships opened fire simultaneously with their most powerful weapons. Quantum disruptor beams lanced through space toward Earth, each one carrying enough energy to vaporize a mountain. Antimatter torpedoes streaked toward the human orbital platforms. Gravity bombs launched toward Earth's major cities, designed to crush entire metropolitan areas under their own weight. Commander Thexmol watched the attack with satisfaction from his position on the flagship's bridge. He had seen this moment dozens of times before with other species. First came the massive display of power, then the desperate attempts at resistance, and finally the inevitable surrender when the defenders realized they could not win. But something was wrong. The first quantum disruptor beams should have reached their targets by now, but Thexmol's sensors showed no explosions on Earth's surface. Instead, the energy readings from the beams seemed to be curving away from their intended paths. Navigation report, he barked at his subordinates. Sir, our weapons appear to be ... bending. The beams are following curved trajectories instead of straight lines. I have never seen anything like this before. The navigation officer's voice carried a note of confusion that Thexmol had never heard in battle. On Earth, Dr. Amanda Rogers watched the Zephyrian attack begin and felt a cold satisfaction as Phase 1 of Project Omega activated automatically. The gravitational resonance arrays throughout the solar system created a localized distortion in space-time around Earth and its defending fleet. Every energy beam, every missile, every exotic weapon fired by the Empire curved back on itself. As space literally bent around humanity's home system, Commander Patterson monitored the gravitational fields from his station on Titan and marveled at how perfectly the system worked. The Zephyrian weapons were incredibly powerful, but power meant nothing when the fabric of space itself guided their attacks away from their targets. Some beams curved in wide arcs and dissipated harmlessly into empty space. Others actually reversed course and headed back toward the ships that had fired them. Emperor Vorthik felt the first stirring of concern as he watched his fleet's initial attack fail completely. In over 1,000 years of conquest, the Empire had never encountered defensive technology that could redirect their weapons. But he was not ready to panic yet. The Empire had faced unusual defenses before, and had always found ways to overcome them. All ships switched to direct kinetic bombardment. Launch physical projectiles at maximum velocity, Vorthic's voice carried across the fleet command frequency. If energy weapons could be redirected, perhaps simple mass drivers would prove more effective. The Zephyrian fleet responded immediately. Thousands of dense metal projectiles launched from their ships toward Earth, each one accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. The kinetic energy in each projectile was enormous, enough to cause continental damage if it struck a planet's surface. But these weapons also followed curved paths through the distorted space around Earth. Admiral Morrison watched from the Liberty as the alien projectiles arced away from their targets like water flowing around a stone. Some of the projectiles actually gained speed as they fell into the artificial gravitational wells created by the human defense system. But their increased velocity only carried them further away from their intended targets. At 14:33 GMT, D.R. Rogers activated Phase 2 of Project Omega. Hidden installations throughout the solar system came online simultaneously, their quantum field generators, creating localized alterations in the fundamental forces of physics. The changes were subtle but devastating, affecting the exotic matter that formed the core of Zephyrian technology. Engineer Chris Baker watched his displays on Europa as the quantum field generators reached full power. The energy patterns they produced were unlike anything that occurred naturally in the universe. In the affected areas of space, the strong nuclear force became slightly weaker. Electromagnetic fields shifted their frequencies, and the quantum mechanical properties that held exotic matter together began to break down. The effect on the Zephyrian fleet was immediate and terrifying. Emperor Vorthic watched in horror as the hull plating on his flagship began to shimmer and fade. The self-repairing metamaterials that had withstood centuries of warfare started to decompose at the molecular level. What had been solid matter moments before was becoming a cloud of individual atoms. "Engineering report," Vorthic shouted. But his engineering staff was too busy trying to understand what was happening to respond coherently. The ship's exotic matter power cores were destabilizing. The quantum field generators that powered their weapons were failing. Even the basic structural materials of the ship were reverting to ordinary compounds that could not withstand the stresses of space travel. Commander Thexmal tried to maintain order as his own ship began to dissolve. Around him, all ships emergency retreat. Full power to engines, but the engines were failing too, as their exotic matter components broke down into their constituent atoms. General Zektar activated the Empire's ultimate weapon in desperation. The temporal field generators were designed to slow down time in localized areas, trapping enemy fleets in bubbles of slow time, while the Empire's ships moved at normal speed. It was a weapon that had never failed to end resistance quickly, but the temporal fields could not form properly in the altered space around Earth. The quantum changes created by humanity's defense system made it impossible for the Zephyrian technology to manipulate time. Instead of trapping the human fleet, the temporal generators simply added their own exotic matter to the growing cloud of decomposing alien technology. At 14:34 GMT, Phase 3 of Project Omega began. Lieutenant Davis activated the cascade amplifiers from her hidden base in the asteroid belt. These devices used quantum entanglement to instantly spread the field alterations throughout the Zephyrian fleet, ensuring that no ship could escape. The effects by moving to a different location, the quantum entanglement worked faster than light itself, carrying the destabilizing fields from ship to ship across the entire alien armada. Emperor Vorthic felt his flagship shudder as the cascade reached his position. Around him, the bridge instruments were dissolving into clouds of elementary particles. The air itself was beginning to break down as the exotic compounds used in the ship's life support systems reverted to ordinary matter. "My lord, we must abandon. Ship immediately." General Zektar's voice was barely audible over the sound of the ship's structure failing. But there was nowhere to go. The escape pods were made of the same materials as the rest of the ship and were dissolving just as quickly. Commander Patterson watched the destruction from Titan and felt a mix of awe and sadness. The Zephyrian fleet was dissolving before his eyes, reduced to harmless clouds of atoms drifting through space. It was the most complete military victory in recorded history, achieved without firing a single conventional weapon or losing a single human life. Dr. Stone monitored the battle from his facility in Colorado and checked the calculations one final time. The field equations were holding perfectly. The gravitational distortions remained stable. The quantum alterations were proceeding exactly as predicted. Project Omega was working flawlessly. Emperor Vothic had just enough time for one final thought. As his flagship completed its transformation from mighty warship to expanding cloud of particles. In all his years of conquest, he had never imagined that such a defense was possible. The humans had not tried to match the Empire's firepower or build stronger shields. Instead, they had changed the rules of physics themselves, that 14 hours 35 minutes and 47 seconds GMT. The last traces of the Zephyrian Empire's invasion fleet dispersed into space. 500 of the most advanced warships ever built had been reduced to their component atoms in less than 4 minutes. The mighty armada that had conquered 43 star systems no longer existed. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the Liberty and watched the empty space where the alien fleet had been moments before. Around Earth, the human defense fleet remained completely intact. Not a single shot had been fired by human weapons. Not one person had died defending their home world. The age of conquest by superior firepower had just ended, though most of the galaxy did not know it yet. In the hours following the destruction of the Zephyrian invasion fleet, Admiral Morrison found himself staring at empty space where 500 enemy warships had existed minutes before. The silence on the Liberty's bridge was profound. His crew moved quietly through their duties, still processing what they had witnessed. The most powerful military force in known galactic history had simply ceased to exist. Lisa Hamilton was the first to break the silence. "Admiral, I'm detecting similar events throughout Zephyrian space. Our long-range sensors are picking up the destruction of military installations across their entire empire. Whatever system we activated, it's operating on a galactic scale." Truth was even more remarkable than Lisa realized. Project Omega had included automated systems placed throughout human space over the past 80 years. When the main defense network activated around Earth, it triggered similar responses at every location where Zephyrian forces were present. Every military base, every occupation fleet, every weapon depot belonging to the Empire was simultaneously affected by the same physics-altering fields that had destroyed their invasion armada. President Collins received reports from across human space confirming the complete elimination of Zephyrian military presence. The empire that had taken a millennium to build had been erased in a single afternoon. Collins sat in the emergency command center beneath Geneva and tried to comprehend the magnitude of what had just occurred. "Dr. Stone, I need you to explain to me exactly what we just did," Collins said during an emergency video conference with the key figures behind. Project Omega.Dr. Stone appeared on the main screen from his facility in Colorado, looking tired, but satisfied. "Madam President, we demonstrated that the fundamental laws of physics are not as unchangeable as most civilizations believe. By creating localized alterations in space-time and quantum mechanics, we made advanced technology impossible. To maintain The Zephyrian ships didn't explode or get destroyed in any conventional sense. They simply stopped being able to exist as coherent objects. The implications were staggering. Humanity had not just won a defensive victory, they had made conventional interstellar warfare obsolete. Any civilization that attempted to use advanced technology for aggressive purposes would find their weapons and ships breaking down at the molecular level. Amanda Rogers emerged from Installation 7 in Antarctica for the first time in months. The Project Omega facilities around the solar system were powering down their active systems, but the passive networks remained in place. Earth now existed within a protective field that would automatically respond to any future threats. Commander, Neil Patterson sent his final status report from Titan. All gravitational resonance arrays are stable and operating in standby mode. The system can be reactivated within minutes if needed, but current threat levels suggest it won't be necessary. Engineer Chris Baker confirmed similar readiness from Europa. The quantum field generators had performed flawlessly during the battle, and were now monitoring space around Earth for any signs of exotic matter that might indicate another alien fleet. Lieutenant Davis reported that the Cascade amplifiers were maintaining their quantum entanglement links, ready to spread defensive fields instantly across vast distances if required. But President Collins was already thinking beyond immediate defense. The destruction of the Zephyrian Empire had left 43 star systems without governments. Billions of beings who had lived under imperial rule were suddenly free, but they were also without protection or leadership. Earth had a choice to make about what kind of galactic neighbor humanity wanted to be. I want to address not just Earth, but every intelligent species within range of our communications, Collins announced. It's time for the galaxy to know that the age of conquest is over. The message that went out from Earth 3 days later was unprecedented in galactic history. Dr. Hamilton's xenobiology team had spent years preparing translations in over 200 alien languages. The signal was broadcast on every known communication frequency and boosted by relay stations throughout human space. To all civilizations receiving this transmission, this is President Collins of the Terran Federation. 3 days ago, the Zephyrian Empire attempted to conquer Earth. Their fleet was completely destroyed in under 4 minutes without the loss of a single human life. We did not achieve this victory through superior firepower or stronger defenses. We changed the fundamental nature of space and time itself to make aggressive warfare impossible. The message continued with detailed scientific data about humanity's defensive capabilities. But more importantly, it included something that no conquering species had ever offered before: complete technical specifications for the same protective systems, offered freely to any civilization that renounced aggressive expansion and agreed to peaceful coexistence. We are not interested in ruling others or claiming territory through force. We offer these defensive technologies to any species that wishes to protect themselves from future aggressors. The price is simple: a commitment to resolve conflicts through negotiation rather than warfare. The response from across the galaxy was immediate and overwhelming.